Hello all, welcome to oratrainings.com. In this session, we'll discuss about how do we declare a PLSQL block as well as how do we declare variables. Okay, so let us get into the objective of this particular session. In this session, we'll be able to understand what are the basic building blocks of a PLSQL program, how do we declare identifiers correctly, what are the rules involved in declaring the identifiers, and how do we write the statement in the business logic section, and what are the rules involved in writing a nested block. So let us get into the understanding of the PL/SQL block information. So how does the PL/SQL block structure look like? So why it is called block structure and what does PL/SQL stands for? PL/SQL stands for procedural language for structured query language, and any PL/SQL program whichever you like, whichever you write in PL/SQL always get divided into these set of blocks. And in this here, if you observe there are four blocks. One is declare, begin, exception, and end. Okay, we generally also call them as section: declare section, begin section, exception section, as well as end section. Out of these four particular blocks, the two are mandatory: the begin as well as end. Okay, and here if you observe, we clearly mention like which particular block is used for which purpose. The name itself says here, if you observe, declare section is for the purpose of declaring variables. It can be a identifiers, a simple variable or a complex variable, declaring cursors, declaring user-defined exception, or declaring user-defined data types. And coming to the begin block, this is the core of the PL/SQL block, and this is where the exact business logic will be written. You can write either SQL statement or you can write PL/SQL statement. Coming to the exception, exception is not mandatory, but it is always the best practice to write exception whenever you write any PL/SQL program, not only in PL/SQL, anywhere in any programming language. Whenever you write any program, always make sure that you have exception handling considered for your program. Then coming to the last one, which is end, it is mandatory to tell to like why it is mandatory, because we have to inform to the PL/SQL engine saying that this is the end of your program so that it can stop the compilation. That is why it is mandatory. So the begin and end are mandatory, declare and exception are optional. In later session, we'll try to understand, we'll have more clarity like how do we declare them, what are the things involved in that. Okay, let's get into the next slide. So a PL/SQL program can have one or more block, and these blocks can be entirely separated or it can be nested with one another. And there are two types of block. One is called anonymous block, other one is called named block, or you can call them as subprograms. So there are two types of block. One is called anonymous block, other one is called subprograms. Anonymous blocks are also called as unnamed blocks. Whatever the program which you write in PL/SQL of anonymous block type will never get stored in the database. Coming to the subprogram or a named block, this particular subprogram will always get stored in the database, and this can be invoked from any other language. It can be from Java, Python, or any programming language whichever have a Oracle database connectivity. Now coming to next. So whenever you write any PL/SQL program, why do we write a program? We write a program for the purpose of executing a particular business logic. So any program involves a temporary allocation of a variables, nothing but we call them as variables. So because why do we require a variable? The variables we require is because you have a program, so the program may require some input and the program may provide some output, or the program internally need to calculate some particular business logic. So to calculate some logic or to retrieve some data or to send some data, it requires a variable for temporary holding of the data. That is what we call them as variables. Okay, there are a number of purposes we use variables. And in this particular coming to the variables, there are different types of variables that we have in PL/SQL. We call them as scalar, composite, reference, LOBs, non-PL/SQL variable, bind and host variable. There are many number of things which will have it. So we'll discuss one by one. So coming to the first one, how do we declare a simple variable in PL/SQL? So here, if you observe the syntax, the first one we mentioned identifier. Identifier means nothing but a variable name. Identifier is nothing but a variable name, followed by we have to mention which data type that particular variable belongs to. So here, if you observe, whatever you have in a square brackets, they are not mandatory, remaining all mandatory. So first thing is identifier followed by data type. This is a very simple declaration. Other one is identifier. You can mention constant, You can mention data type, you can mention not null, or you can also assign the value to the variable during declaration itself. So here if you observe few examples, so in this one the first one is like we consider the declare section, and we declared a variable with the name v underscore age. We mention it as constant, number of 2. Number is nothing but an integer or a numeric value. We mention the size is 2. Size is nothing but the number of digits you want to consider is 2. And to assign a value, we have to use colon equal to. We have to use colon equal to. We mention the value, then semicolon. Semicolon is for the purpose of ending the statement. Any statement whenever you end in PL/SQL should end with semicolon. And begin and end. Any PL/SQL block, whenever you write any valid PL/SQL block, it requires at least one statement in the business logic block. That is why here, if you observe, we have not written anything like no business logic involved, but we have written null statement here because at least one statement is required to successfully compile any PL/SQL program. So let us see some examples of declaring PL/SQL program. So now I open my SQL worksheet. So the best practice always is to save your program, to save the program. So I'll just save here so I'll just say hello world dot SQL. Okay. So I just saved the file as hello world dot SQL, and we know that there are 4 sections, right? Declare, begin, exception, and end. So out of these 4 sections, let us say declare is not mandatory and exception is also not mandatory. I just want to write very simple PL/SQL program without having any compilation issue. But let us see how does it work. So I'll just compile. How do you compile? You just press F5. You just press F5. Okay. Now what it is telling? So it's telling that like encounter the symbol end when expecting one of the following. So it just gives some good amount of message. Okay. But I'll not get into that. So what I'll do is I'll just mention null and semicolon. Now press F5 and see what it meant, what it provided. Now it says anonymous block completed. It says anonymous block completed. It is not saying that hello world.sql is compiled, or it is not telling some other program name. It doesn't bother about what program, what file name you mentioned, but just simply says anonymous block completed. The reason is your program, whatever the program which we have written, is not getting saved in the database. It is just available in the local system, in whichever system you're working on. Okay, that is a simple one. Now let us declare a simple variable. So I'll just open one more worksheet. So what I'll do is click on connection, right click on your connection, click on open SQL worksheet, and just save it. Save it. So when you click on Control S, if it doesn't open any of the save as option, what you do is just give a space bar, then press Control S. Now it just gives you the save as option. So I'll say PL/SQL declare variables dot SQL. Now I want to declare few variables. So the section names or block names are not, I mean to say it can be in uppercase or lowercase. It is in case insensitive. Case insensitive. Declare, begin, end. I don't want to consider exception as of now. Okay, at this initialization. So I want to declare one variable with a name, v underscore name. Size, I have to mention varchar up to 30. Okay. So this is how I can declare a variable. Now what I have done, I declared a variable with a name v underscore name. Then the data type I mentioned it as varchar to 30 digits, 30 characters it can hold. Right. I'm assigning a value. Hello world. This is my PL/SQL program. Okay. Now what you can do, I'll just say null. I don't want to do any. I don't want to write any business logic. I'll just press F5. Now what it is telling? It is again I'm getting into some other error, right? So string buffer too small or something. What it means? Whatever the sentence I have mentioned, it is greater than 30 characters. What you can do is just mention it as 150, so that like we can rectify this error. Press F5, right? Now it says anonymous block completed. It says anonymous block completed. Okay. So now I'll declare few more variables. V underscore number 10. For number, it is not mandatory. It doesn't need to mention the size. I'll say 1500, some number, and let us say v underscore date. I'll declare one more variable with a data type as date. Okay, now we declared all the variables, but I want to see like what is the value of them. I want to print them in the output. So to print these variable values in the output, you need to call a particular API called DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line. Okay, so we'll discuss about this later, but as of now I'll just write it so that we'll get some clarity, like how the value gets printed in the output. Okay, so DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line. So in this one, what I'll do is I'll just mention name is piping symbol v underscore name. Similarly, I'll write the other things also for remaining variables. Number is v underscore num. Similarly, date is v underscore date. So what we have done in the declared section, we declared three variables and we have assigned the values. And in the business logic, in the begin statement, I'm calling an API called DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line. This API, what it does is just you provide the input character and it will provide the output in the console. Okay. It's like providing output in the screen for the user to view it. I'll just press F5. It says completed, but where is the output? I could not see it. We could not see the output, right? What you have to do is we have to explicitly enable a window called DBMS output here. Can you see DBMS output? Click on this one and it just opens one window here. Click on this plus symbol, select the connection in which you are running your program. Select the connection in which you're running your program. In my SQL developer, I have only one connection VIS. I'll just go with that and enable it. Now what we do, you just simply rerun your program and you should be able to see the 3 lines output here. Can you see? Hello world, this is my PLSQL program and we could see the value of 1500, but for the date we could not see any value because we have not assigned any value to the date. We have not assigned any value to the date. Let us say for the date, what I'll do is I just want to assign yesterday's date. I want to assign yesterday's date. So what I'll do, sysdate minus 1. Today's date is current date is nothing but sysdate. I want to print the yesterday's date. So then I'll use sysdate minus 1, right? Let us see what it is doing now. Can you see? It is just printing 25th October, which is yesterday's date. Okay. So this is how we can write a very simple PLSQL program. Let us get into another one. So these are the simple data types which are available. Like as of now, we just discussed about varchar, date, as well as number. There are, apart from those, we also have some other thing like a long, character, boolean, timestamp with time zone, local time zone. There are many other things, right? Okay. Now, coming to other one, declaring variables using a percentile type attribute. Using a percentile type attribute. So the advantage of percentile type attribute is, let us say you want to declare a variable, but you are not aware of what is the data type of that particular variable should be, because this variable value depends upon some other source which is getting from a different table and different column. So you know the table name and column name, but you don't know the type. So in those kind of scenarios, the best and easiest thing is you can just mention variable name followed by the table name dot column name. So this particular declaration, this kind of declaration helps you to reduce the bugs, because let us say your program is depending upon a particular table and a particular column which is managed by other system or maybe other kind of extension or integration team, and they may change the data type or they may change the size of your variable, size of that particular column. So in those kind of scenarios, your program which is depending upon their particular table doesn't need to get changed whenever they change the size or data type. So it has to work dynamically such a way that even they change the column name, when they change the size and the data type, your program should not get affected. So in those kind of this is the best way you can declare a variable. Okay, only thing is we just need to mention a variable name followed by table name dot column name percentile type. Okay, let us see this example also. I'll just open one more worksheet. Declare using percentile dot SQL. Okay, so declare begin end, that's it. Now I'll just say v underscore name is equal to headset parties dot party underscore name percentile right? Now you can just declare, you can assign a value v underscore name is equal to Oracle database, right? Just compile now. Got it? This is how we can declare a variable using personal type attribute. So let us get into the next slide. We have seen the sample. I'll go to the next slide now. Yep. So coming to the different types of variables, we have another type of variable called Boolean variables, which can take only true, false, or null. Okay. And what are the other kind of data types we have? Table data type, record data type, nested table data type, and VRS. Other kind of data types also involves LOB data types, which involves like storing the image of the user or image of the employee, or like a purchase order document, PDF document, or a employee verification document. Like whenever they do a KYC, right, they store all your documents like Aadhaar card, PAN card, passport, many things, right, in the database. So they generally prefer BLOB or CLOB in those kind of scenarios. Next slide. Yep. So just now we have seen usage of DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line. What exactly is this one? This is an Oracle provided package, which we generally use it for the purpose of printing the output in the console. Okay. So if at all, if you want to print the value using DBMS output, so just now in the SQL developer, what we have done, we have enabled the DBMS output by like selecting that particular window. Here we provide an option called set server output on. So this generally, this if at all, if you're running your program from a command line, right, SQL plus prompt, then you have to explicitly enable this one, set server output on statement, then you have to run the program. Okay. Coming to next slide. So now some of the guidelines which will help you to understand the PLSQL program and write your program effectively. Just observe these particular statements carefully. Statements can continue over several lines. Nothing but whenever you write any PLSQL program, right? So there is no restriction for you. You can just continue them writing in a different set of blocks, right? 1 minute. So here, if you observe, let us say when you're writing a program, right, you can write your statement at any line. So in some of the programs, like let us say I can just assign, like here, if you observe, I have declared variable name line number 3, assign the data type line number 5. Yes, still it will work. Okay. So we are not like we now this way. Let us say if you are writing something like a DEC in one particular line and LARE in the second line, this will not work. Okay. You cannot split your command, right? You cannot split your command because that will be a different thing. Like it cannot understand what you have split, right? That is why you have to be very careful in these kind of scenarios. Now, yeah, where are we? Yeah, statements can continue over several lines. Classification of lexical units are divided into these 4 types. Keywords should not be split. To use a reserved names as identifier, enclose them in double quotes. Like now we have the reserved words, right? Like a declare, begin, is. These preferably don't use them. Preferably don't use them. Whenever you declare any local variable, just prefix them with appropriate naming convention according to your guideline provided by your architecture team. It can be generally we follow it as v underscore, l underscore, p underscore, g underscore, something like that with the appropriate underscores, so that to understand like this is a variable for some kind of functionality like that. These are some of the delimiters which are reserved letters, I can say. Now piping symbol, we know it, or single line comment or multi-line comment, assignment operator, logical operators, mathematical operators. Make sure that you use them appropriately so that like your program will not get into errors. Next thing, identifiers and literal. So identifier is nothing but whenever declare a variable, that should also follow some particular guidelines. It can contain up to 30 characters, must begin with an alphabetical number, should not be a reserved word, should not be the same as a database column or database table name, cannot contain characters such as hyphens, slashes, or spaces. Okay. Literals, character and date letters must be enclosed in single quotation. Numbers can be numbers can be simple values or scientific values. Whenever you are declaring, whenever you are assigning a character value to a variable, that should be enclosed in single quotes. Even applicable for the date also. If you're trying to assign some date to a particular variable, then make sure that you enclose them in a single quotes. Then only it will get compiled. Now, so there are some particular SQL functions which can be used in the PL SQL directly. It doesn't need to write select query. using just a direct SQL function, let us say to underscore char or length function. There are some set of functions. Not all functions are supported directly, but there are some set of single row functions which can be applied, which can be used in PL/SQL directly. Okay. Now here, if you observe, there are a few things which cannot be used, like a decode or a group. You cannot use it directly. So yep, data type conversion function, they are directly available in a PL/SQL. Here, if you observe a simple example, right? So we are trying to assign a date. We are trying to convert character to a date, and we are using the to underscore date data type conversion function, right? Let us see this example. Let us say I want to assign a variable. Just declare. I'll just do one. Create one more program. Let us say. Database conversion functions dot SQL declare begin end. Okay, so I want to just get month and year from the date. I want to get month and year from the date. What I'll do, v underscore mon year, I want to consider varchar. Okay, not the date. I want to consider it as varchar, like 10 characters. So what I'll do is v underscore mon year is equal to 2 underscore char of sysdate comma month and year. I want to extract only month and year, and then print in the output DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line value of month and year is v underscore mon year, like this. Now just execute it f5. Can you see 10 hyphen 2020? I can just have some more extra character like this. Okay, 10 hyphen 2020. Now what are we doing? We are converting a sys date, which is of data type date, into a character using a to underscore function. We can just find out one more thing also. Let us say I want to get the length of this particular value. I'll say length v underscore length number. So I'll say v underscore length is equal to length of v underscore mon year. Length is v underscore length. Okay, now just clear this and try to rerun. Can you see length is 7, 4 digits of year, 2 digits of month, and 1 is hyphen, total 7, 4 plus 2 plus 1. Okay, this is how you can use the to char. Similarly, you can apply to date and to number also. Now coming to other one, nested blocks and variable scope. So in a PL/SQL, you can write a block inside a block. Similarly, we also discussed about writing a function inside another function, nothing but nested function. We also have a concept of nested blocks. So what do you mean? What do you mean by a block? What do you mean by nested block? Nothing but writing a block inside another block is called nested block. So let us see a sample to understand why do we use it, or how does it work, kind of thing. Okay. So here, if you observe the example, so in this one, I have a declare section here and mention the section name as outer, block name as outer, and in the begin block I have one more declare block, like a declare, and I have some kind of business logic end and something like this. Now here, if you observe, I have a variable called name, which I have assigned the value as aquaregia, and here I have a, again in the same, in the inside block also have the, I declared a variable with a declared a variable with the name, same name, and then varchar and art. So but here, if I try to print the value of this name, it will just consider the local block. If at all, if you want to consider the value of the outer block, then what I mentioned, the block name dot variable name, right? So this is how you can refer to the outer block, if at all, if you want to get the value from the previous block. I'll just copy this program and run it, see how does it work. You can just use Control F7 to format your PL/SQL program. Okay, I'll just clear the log cache. Yep. Now here, if you observe, now where is the first output statement? Inner block, inner name is name. Inner block, outer name. What it is printing? Outer region. aqua regia, because I mentioned the block name. So in the child can access the parent, but parent, like here, what are we trying to do? So we are trying to access the variable name, this name inside this one. So that is why I mentioned block, the outer block name dot name, and that is why it printed aqua regia. And similarly, you have declared I declared a variable called temp 100, and the value of the temporary variable is 100. And here, if you observe, okay, now, so I just mentioned, if you're trying, if I mention, if I referred, if I'm referring to the variable name here, what is happening? The scope of the inner variable, the scope of this variable name is just till the end of the line number 13. Once you come out of the line number 13, this variable name is not even considered, nothing but the value art will not be considered. But here, when you're trying to print whether with a block name or without block name, still it is printing aqua regia. So what I'm trying to tell you is the scope of any variable is just within the scope of the block. Once you come out of the block, the variable will cease out. That's it, nothing but. Let us, if you're trying to access the variable temp in this particular outer block, it will not work. Just see here, let us say I'll try to assign some value to this one and see what will happen now. It should give an error, right? Can you see? It says variable temp must be declared. So that is the issue. The scope of the variable is just limited to the block. Now, and the different operators in PLSQL, yes, all the operators which are available in SQL are supported in PLSQL also, like a logical, arithmetical operator, concatenation operator, the parenthesis, exponential operator also supported in PLSQL. Okay. Now, so coming to the final slide. So far what we have done is we have discussed about how do we declare variables, what are the blocks available in PLSQL, and how do we make use of DBMS underscore output dot put and put underscore line, and how do we declare identifiers, what are the guidelines for that, and the guidelines for the nested block. Okay, so thank you.